behalf of Friends School of Portland, I would like to welcome everyone tonight. My name is James Grumbach. I'm the head of school, the recent head. I still feel like the recent head. I arrived in July. Most of you, I think, know that we are sharing the island with the original school, Governor Baxter School for the Deaf, under the umbrella of the Maine Educational Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Well, tonight I'm delighted about this event. We have a huge turnout. We have new friends, old friends, faculty, current parents, prospective parents, and of course the distinguished alumni of various Friends schools from the Mid-Atlantic to the throughout the Northeast. Quaker education, like Quaker worship, is experiential, and we're fortunate to have this remarkable panel assembled tonight. Quaker alums who will share their experiences about how their lives were affected, perhaps changed, by the experience of attending Quaker schools. It gives me great pleasure to first introduce Rob Levin, who is on the board of Friends School and who really deserves the credit for the vision for tonight's panel presentation. So,
this is maybe a record here in Maine of collective Quaker wisdom, people who benefited from Quaker education, I think. And according to my back of the envelope numbers, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 years of collective Quaker educational experience right here. So I don't know if I would be surprised if that's ever happened in Maine before, let alone other places. We've asked each of the panelists to speak for up to 5 minutes on how their Quaker education made a difference in their lives and their life's work.
All right. My name's Barbara Vickery. I live in Richmond, Maine. And the most important thing, as I was reminded this evening by a member of the audience, that my Quaker education brought to me was my husband of 38 years, whom I met in 10th grade geometry class at George School in Pennsylvania. And it's been pretty steady since then. So that's one of the advantages. I work at the Nature Conservancy in Brunswick, Maine. I've been there for 24 years. You can see I'm a stayer in more ways than one. My work there is Director of Conservation Programs, and what I'm responsible for is deciding, or helping to guide, the conservation work of the Conservancy on land, in freshwater, and in the marine realm. I wanted to give you a little bit of background and then tell you what I thought was most salient about my experience in Quaker education for my work and life today. I also went to the Lincoln School in Providence for 2 years in first and second grade, as well as George School for grades 10 and 11. To me, Quaker education is not just about the school you go to. I went to farm and wilderness camps in Vermont for 2 years, and that was a really enriching, deepening, etching, engraving part of my Quaker education in a way, well beyond the schools. Reinforcing, I guess is the right word. I also was brought up as a Quaker, as I'm a member of the Cambridge Friends meeting, although I probably wouldn't recognize me there anymore in Massachusetts, and went to first day school there and was clerk of the junior business meeting and all that kind of thing. And in my own family, although none of us is an active member of a Quaker meeting today, every birth, marriage, death of our family for the last long time has been acknowledged with Quaker meeting for worship, even if it's just 10 members of the family in a room together. The other thing I wanted to mention as I tried to think about influences, it was a little hard for me to separate all of those influences from the era in which I grew up. I'm a child of the 60s. And there was that group that was the tune-in, drop-out kind of group, but there was also the, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem group. Now, that's not a very Quakerly thing to say, not the way you say it, but the impulse behind it of get involved is very Quakerly. And that was a very big part of my growing up. So I grew up with values of living simply, of giving generously, and of using one's skills in service to community, whether it was in your job or as a volunteer. So it's not surprising that almost everybody in my family, myself and my siblings, work for nonprofits. That's for starters. But within that, as I think about how I came to be at the Nature Conservancy as opposed to some other conservation or environmental group, I don't think it's an accident at all, because the Nature Conservancy's approach is we can work with you. We are a non-adversarial, collaborative group. That's a fundamental value of the organization, and it's clear I chose that because that's a value with which I feel comfortable. So thinking about what were the things about my education that really are salient to me now, I'd start with community, and it's about more than tolerance of diversity. It's about active inclusion, and that was part of all my experience. It's about social service, which was a very personal sense of needing to engage on a person-to-person basis with those who need our assistance in whatever way. The experience of Quaker Meeting for Worship that at George School, where there were Catholics and Jews. I don't think we had very many Buddhists in the school then, but you get the idea. From many different backgrounds, but within the school context, Quaker Meeting for Worship, it was inclusive, it was equal access, and it was equal responsibility. Everybody is part of this spiritual community, and anybody could speak if they were so moved. And that sense that it's up to us, even in the spiritual realm, was something I still carry with me. But the last thing I wanted to mention that I think is in many ways the most important to my current life is the Quaker way of decision making. I didn't realize this until quite recently. In my professional life, I've been working with collaborations where people are trying to learn what consensus means and how you achieve it. I didn't realize for a while how foreign this is to many, many people. And when I have colleagues who say, oh, it just takes so long, it's so inefficient, I suddenly realize they're missing a point. And when I go to try to explain the point, I find myself deeply reaching for my Quaker roots to explain what the point of consensus-based decision-making is as opposed to majority rule. And I'm going to stop there, except to say that the other thing I was just suddenly realizing as I was thinking about my non-professional life is that I don't think it's an accident that my primary form of, in a sense, recreation and athleticism these days is through yoga, where it comes naturally to me deeply to meditate physically in a community of people. And I thought, oh, I know why that comes naturally to me.